Hey there, it's Seb Frey here with another exciting episode of It's a Seb Show. And today I want to talk about what to expect when you're inspecting. That's right. So when you go to buy a house, you have your due diligence period. And one of the big reasons for that is so you can do an inspection of the house that you're buying. Sometimes, a lot of times actually, the seller will do their own inspection and give you that inspection report before you make the offer on the property so that you know what you're buying because it is an as-is sale. But whether or not the seller has given you a home inspection report, you'll probably be doing your own home inspection anyway because, if you're spending $1 million, $2 million, hey, what's another $500 or whatever? And speaking of which, a home inspection generally does cost around $500. Now, it could be more, it could be less. In Monterey County, it might only be an average of $400. In Santa Clara County, it might be $650. But let's just say it costs around $500 for a home inspection. Also depends how big the home is. If there's detached structures, is there a guest house, right? There's lots of variables that go in there. But your average house, I'm going to say, if it's just a house, is going to cost you somewhere around $500. Now, this is the home inspection we're talking about, not the termite inspection, which you might also get. That will be usually somewhere between $200 and $300 for a termite inspection. But the home inspection, somewhere around $500. One thing to understand about the home inspection profession is that it's not a licensed profession, right? Like you need a license to sell real estate. You need a license to do a wood-destroying organism inspection or a termite inspection. You need a license to cut someone's hair, but you don't need a license to do a home inspection. Home inspections, home inspectors, a lot of them, most of them, the good ones certainly, are trained. There are a couple of nationally recognized organizations which train and sort of regulate home inspectors out there. And so most home inspectors will have a certification from one or both of these national organizations. So there are some certain standards, but there's no official government standards. And so because of that, there's no official, home inspection report. You'll find that every home inspector has their own report. They do it their own way. Now, there are several software packages. I'm not sure how many, but there are a few software packages out there that different home inspectors will use, and they'll have like an iPhone or an Android phone or an iPad, and they'll go around the property and they'll be inspecting the home and taking pictures with their mobile device. A lot of them will have like a standalone point-and-shoot camera, but that's their main tool for doing their inspection. It's that device and their eyes. They'll have a few other tools. They will probably have like a little device to test your outlets, maybe a thing to test your water pressure. They'll have like a jumpsuit for when they're going underneath your house or maybe in your attic. They might have a respirator, some goggles. They'll have a flashlight, but they'll have a ladder to get up to the second story or get into the attic. But that's about all the home inspector is going to really bring with them because the home inspection is a visual inspection, right? They're not allowed to like drill holes in the walls. Have you ever seen that show, Holmes Inspection, on HGTV? It's in Canada, and they got this guy, Mike Holmes, and he goes, I'm going to do a Holmes inspection, where he tears the whole entire house apart. You can't do that. Can't do that in California anyway. The standard purchase agreement says that you will only do non-destructive inspections without the seller's permission, and sellers are not generally going to give you permission to like go about destroying their house, to do your inspection. So the inspections basically are visual inspections, right? And so they're just going to walk around your house and they're going to note things they see visually, right? So what can they see? They can see cracks in the foundation. They can see rot. They can see discoloration. They can see signs of settlement. What else can they see? They can see scratches. They can see doors that are dragging. They'll look at the water heater. They'll look at the furnace. They'll look at the fireplace. They'll look at the electrical panel, and they'll make certain observations, right? Like this circuit here is double lugged, right? Which means there's too many wires going to that one circuit, right? Or I seem to notice that the burners on the hot water heater look like they have, the fuel mixture is too rich. I suggest you have somebody look at that. Or like they'll say like the firebox in the chimney is cracked. You should have a chimney inspector come and take a look at that. They'll go up on your roof and they'll say, hey, look at the flashing. Looks like it's installed incorrectly here. There's nail heads popping out of the shingles. That shouldn't be happening. They'll talk about cracks in the foundation. This crack may be a little too big, or there's efflorescence in the concrete in the foundation, which is an indication of previous water in the sub area of your house, right? You'll see lots and lots of stuff on the home inspection report. You'll see tons of stuff. In fact, I'm going to say that you'll probably see at least 100 different little problems with your house. Sometimes you might see 200 or 300 little problems with your house. So the thing to understand is that, we live in the great United States of America, man. I mean, this is the USA, right? And like, what do we do when something goes wrong here? We sue somebody, right? I mean, like, there's a reason why the disclosure package for a house is like this thick. Well, actually, this thick, right? It's like there's a lot of paper in there. And all of that is because somebody got sued for something at some point in time. So to hopefully not have that happen again, lawyers came up with some additional language to, give you additional information about the edge case scenario that could happen, right? Same thing with home inspectors, right? Like, oh, this seems like a very minor thing to mention, right? But what happens if you don't mention it? Well, if you don't mention it, you could get sued over it, right? And you don't want to get sued over it, right? So what do? You mention every little thing, even things that are normal, even things that are typical, even things that you should expect that you would have on like a 50-year-old house, right? So as time goes by, building standards change, right? So like a lot of stuff which when they made a house like maybe 50 years ago was no longer part of what was not at that time standard building code. For example, like popcorn ceilings, right? That have asbestos in them, right? Those were legal, until 1976 or 78 or whenever that was, right? After that, you couldn't have that anymore. Inspector might see it, totally normal. Millions of houses have that, right? But they're going to say that, hey, there might be asbestos in the ceiling, right? Could be, right? Is that something to be concerned about? It's not good, but it's for your information. It's considered safe, right? But they have to mention that there's asbestos in the ceiling, even though it's perfectly normal in a house of that era, right? And people have been living in those houses for decades, and everything's been totally fine, but they have to tell you about it anyway. Or like another classic is like the space between the pickets and a railing. They can't exceed 4 inches anymore because like a little kid can put their head through the gap if it's more than 4 inches. Used to be it was 6 inches, right? And kids would, I guess, get their head stuck or something like that between the gaps in the rails, right? So they'll say this is no longer the code, or they'll say you're not using tempered glass anymore. You have to use tempered glass if if the window is too close to a door, or if it's part of a door, or if it's part of a sliding glass door, right? There's many things that come up home inspection which are normal and expected, but the inspector has to write them up anyway because they're not perfect. They're not ideal. So if the home inspector finds anything that is out of code, not to code, anything less than perfect, they have to tell you about it. They have to tell you about it because if they don't, if they fail to do so, and if there's a 1 in a million chance that something bad happens because they failed to do so, guess what? They are potentially liable for a lot of money, right? And I'm sure they have insurance, right? I imagine it very rarely ever comes to the level of like a multi-million-dollar lawsuit against a home inspector. But the way to keep yourself safe from any of these, any kind of like whiff of impropriety or lax in judgment or lax in standards, is to do a very thorough inspection and alert you, the buyer, about every single little possible problem the inspector can see with the house, and that is their job. Now, you as a home buyer, especially if you're a first-time buyer, a lot of the stuff is going to be very unfamiliar to you, and it really sounds very scary. A lot of it is like asbestos, man. That's very scary. Like double lugging, like fire hazard, right? Like this is a Federal Pacific panel. It's been recalled, right? I mean, like what? There's a crack in the foundation, right? I mean, like standing water. That's no good, right? I mean, like there's many things that come up in the home inspection that do in fact sound very scary and could potentially be a problem. They could definitely be a problem. But the important thing to know is that they are typical. So look at the house that you're buying, and you say, well, look, I'm paying like $1 million for this house, right? Like, what about all these other houses which sold for $1 million? Were those perfect? Well, that's a funny thing is that you'll never usually be able to tell what exactly is the condition of that particular house that you're using as a comparable. You don't know what that home inspection was like. You don't know what that termite inspection was like, but you know that typically houses of a certain era, right, are built a certain way in a certain location, and so it's safe to assume that most of these other houses, they had very similar home inspections to the one that you are looking at for the house that you want to buy. No house is perfect, not even a brand new house. Many brand new houses have construction defects. In fact, lots of brand new houses have construction defects. There's lots of lawsuits against builders for construction defects. And that's actually one of the nicer things about buying like an older, well-maintained home is that, it's been sitting there for 30, 40, 50, 60 years, right? If it's been there for 30, 40, 50, 60 years and it's basically in good shape, it's probably basically a good house, and that all these little things that you see on the home inspection report are typical of homes of that age in that location. So when you're looking at that home inspection, listen, don't freak out. I know it can be a lot to look at, and there are definitely some warning signs you want to look out for on any home inspection, which I don't want to talk about them right now in this particular episode of Seb Frey TV, the extra special scary things you want to look at. But I just want to point out that the home inspection should be very thorough, very detailed. There should be a lot of information there in that home inspection. They should find a lot of things that are wrong with your house, that are out of spec, that are less than perfect, because if they do, that means that your home inspector has done a very thorough job. And it does not mean it's a bad house. It just means that, yeah, there is some work to be done, as with any house. All houses need work. This is kind of one of the joys of home ownership, right? The honey-do list, right? So when you buy your house, it'll come free with a honey-do list. You can look at it like that. All right, well, that is it for this episode of It's a Seb Show. I do hope you have enjoyed watching it. And if you're getting a home inspection, don't freak out. Don't freak out. It's going to be kind of a little scary a lot of the times, but it's normal. It's just part of the joy of the home buying and home selling process. All right, listen, thank you so much for watching this episode of It's a Seb Show. Would you do me a huge favor? Would you give me a comment? I mean, I'd love a comment or a like, and what would be awesome, actually, is if you would share this with somebody that you know who is looking at a gnarly home inspection and freaking out, because I think it might be able to bring them some calm. All right, that's it for this episode of It's a Seb Show. Thank you so much for watching, but don't worry. I will have another episode up again before too long.